This is a real chicken and the egg situation. This is maybe the toughest question I've ever had to talk about here on a Paint and Talk. The question of which one matters more, ideation or execution, technical skill or vision. Which one matters more? Before we even start here, I think this is an episode that warrants, I ask you all, comment down below. Which one do you value more, right? Because I think genuinely there are almost exactly equally good cases in both directions here. Like sometimes, we'll be talking about a topic and two really great cases will come out, but one's, pretty obviously the favorite. I genuinely go back and forth on this every day. Like you could catch me tomorrow and this would be a radically different Paint Talk. That's actually part of the reason why, despite the fact that I had the idea for this all the way back with the first Paint Talk, I've never discussed it because I've never actually been able to make my mind up on this question. It's genuinely maybe the hardest thing I've ever thought about. It's also the reason why tonight at 1:42 in the morning, I finally mustered the gusto to be like, okay, I just gotta do it. I just gotta have the discussion. It's gonna be bad. It's gonna be worse than I want to be, but I don't think I'll actually get myself to move on this topic until all of you give me some input on my own thoughts. I think this is one of those times, genuinely. Let's start with ideation, right? The idea that ideation is the more important aspect of the two has, on the one hand, some really great ground, but on the other hand, some great arguments against it. The ground is very simple. It's one that we've all thought about before. The idea is what you gotta start with. You gotta start with the great ideas, right? You also, not that it's impossible to, but it's much harder to teach good ideas. If no matter who it is, if I put somebody in the Yale MFA program, they're gonna come out a good painter or artist, or I don't even know what they do in that program. So shout out to them, shout out Yale, go Skull and Crossbones Club. But if I put them there, they're gonna be a good artist. You can teach painting, you can teach drawing, all these things. It's not impossible, but pretty hard to teach vision, right? You can hone vision. You can come in and go, okay, this is, you have this good idea, but you need to trim it here, X, Y, Z, but you can't really teach it. I don't know. I also go back and forth on this segment of the argument too. Can you teach somebody to have good ideas? The only thing I could think of is maybe if you show them a bunch of interesting things, they will have better ideas, right? That's something I think about sometimes in terms of if you take somebody who has great technical skill and send them around the world to see the whole world, they're gonna come back with something to paint that's interesting, So that's the argument for it, though. For the sake of this argument, for the sake of today, I'm gonna say that you can't really teach artists' vision. I'm gonna go with that. I think that could be a whole Paint Talk in its own right, one that would likely come off so snobby being an artist here. Can you teach artists' vision? That's just the dumbest thing ever. But I'm gonna say here, just for the sake of this argument, because it makes this whole thing a lot smoother, that you cannot teach artists' vision. That makes it a much more valuable skill, especially coming into this age where automation is going to take the jobs of so many artists on a technical level. Skill, ideas, all these things are going to be 10 times more important, 10 times more valuable. Do I believe that what the big marketing firms want as skills to pay high salaries for is what dictates what's valuable in art? No. A lot of other people do, though. That's why I'm mentioning it, at least, because I think that, the average guy, if they hear I'm an artist, I get paid $1 million a year, is just going to assume they're a better artist. Oftentimes that's how the general public kind of does things, the general public that's not art snobs like us. So I think it's important to mention here at least. So this skill is valued. Ideation's valued. It theoretically, at least for this Paint and Talk, cannot be taught. So that would mean it's pretty important, right? You can't teach this part, you can only teach the other part. So theoretically, the guy with the vision is the irreplaceable component. You can get any old guy with technical skill. Just get somebody to draw for a little bit and you can get them to do anything, right? So if they're replaceable and the other guy's irreplaceable, of course, technical skill is the far less important part of this. And ideation's the far more important part of this, right? Pretty solid argument. This is a pretty solid argument here. Something to mention too is this idea that, simply put, without the whole idea for a piece, there is no art. Ideas are where it all starts. So by proxy of going one thing would not exist without the other, then you can very easily go, ideation is the more important thing there. The other thing, scarcity. There's less people with ideas to make art about than there are people willing to make things. I don't love that statement. It's one that I think a lot of people there's a bug right here, whoa. It's one that I think a lot of people would agree with, and I think that in terms of who is coming up with the ideas that end up being big, right? Influential, XYZ. Replace your favorite word in there. Probably a smaller group of people than the people executing on those ideas, right? So I do think the scarcity is there. I don't quite think, though, that there's like a hierarchy of people with better ideas than others. Like, I think that a lot of it's circumstance, so I don't really want to go fully down that route, but there's a degree of scarcity that you could also use in the ideation camp. If you're in the barracks, if you're in the trenches really trying to fight for ideation here, if you're like, ideation is the more important thing, you could take the grenade, you could pull out the pin, and you could throw the scarcity argument in, So, pretty solid arguments here, right? It's a harder skill to acquire, possibly can't teach it, it's more scarce than the other skills. You need it to create any art in general. You can't do it without the ideas, You can teach the other stuff. You can't teach this, again, theoretically. Seems like this would be the more important thing. The other idea, too, is that you need a solid foundation for any piece, right? Like, if you come to somebody with the idea for Good Will Hunting, they're going to come out with a pretty good screenplay at the end of it, right? If you tell them the plot beats of that, they're going to come out with something pretty good in comparison to just like, an idea that like Kramer from Seinfeld would come up with, being like, what if we did a movie about movies or something like that, This is something that is generally accepted. This is also something, though, that I don't know if I 100% agree with, and I think I'm going to kind of use as a transition here into talking about technical skill. Because there's an argument to be made that ideation, while important, does not matter at all if you have somebody with the right technical skill, right? So back to this idea. We take Kramer's idea from Seinfeld, and he has an idea for a book about Pokemon or whatever, right? I don't know. I don't know why Kramer has to be involved in this. I've been rewatching Seinfeld lately, so that's 100% why I'm mentioning here, but there's an idea for a book about Pokemon, right? A book that any 5-year-old came up. I mean, I used to write about Pokemon as a kid, so I did come up with that. Right? So any dumb guy could come up with a book about Pokemon. Very simple idea. A book where Pokemon turn into... Wait, Detective Pikachu was already a movie. I was going to say Private Investigators, but I didn't even see Actually, I did see the movie. A guy was sitting next to me on a plane, and he turned on his subtitles for me so I could watch it in the seat next to him. So, needless to say, I didn't get a damn thing out of that movie. I don't know what happened in that whole thing. But technically, I have seen the movie. Okay, so there's a movie about Pokemon where they get sent back in time, and the Roman army, Julius Caesar, uses the Pokemon as a great new weapon to go conquer all his stuff with. You know what Julius was doing, that guy, right? That's the idea. Really, really goopy ass idea. This is some lowbrow stuff. Like, this is Sharknado levels of bad, right? And The Sun Also Rises. These are two plot premises, right? The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway, considered to be one of the greatest books ever, right? If I walk up to a guy in Dollar Tree right now, Dollar Tree's closed, 7-Eleven's open though, okay? Let's say I literally stop this recording. I walk up to a guy in a 7-Eleven and I go, I need you to write me a book. And I go, I need you to write this outline. Let's say for some reason he's chronically unemployed and goes, yeah, sure, why not? I hand him the outline for The Sun Also Rises. Then I travel back in time and I hand Ernest Hemingway himself the idea for my Pokemon Julius Caesar book and give him the full context on what's going on with these Pokemon, because he would be mind blown. I mean, he'd be like, wow, this is awesome. I don't know. I don't know anything about his thoughts on that kind of stuff. Did he like that? I don't know. What do you like Pokemon? Let's say here he's indifferent. I hand him the book. I go, Ernest, I'm giving you $1 billion. This is your next novel, right? I would be willing to guess, just going out on a limb here, I'd be willing to guess Ernest Hemingway's book would still come out better, right? Now, there's a couple holes in this, right? Some people would respond to this right away going, okay, yeah, maybe Ernest Hemingway would come up with a better book than the guy in the Dollar Tree who had The Outline of the Sun Also Rises. But that's because it's Ernest Hemingway. If I took that same book, the same swap, but instead of Ernest Hemingway, I just gave it to like a decent writer, like somebody who has what we would consider to be technical skill, but isn't actually considered, like isn't Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway is a genius. If you just give this to a good writer, like somebody who's considered to be skilled, it wouldn't be quite as fair. To that I say yes, but that means then you have to quantify technical skill, right? I mean, that's easy to do in painting because it's very easy to go like, do you know color theory? Do you know anatomy? Do you know your 3D forms? Like all these things you can drill things into people. Technical skill in writing is a far less quantifiable thing, so there is kind of that hole in this dilemma. Let's once again then take the idea for paintings and swap them around, right? I have an idea for an amazing painting of what's a bad painting idea? This. I take this as my reference image. I go back in time. I give it to Da Vinci. I give it to Leonardo da Vinci. And then I take the Mona Lisa. I take his sketches, I steal them, I bring them here, and this paint and talk is me trying to make the Mona Lisa. In every single reality, Da Vinci's painting's coming out way better than mine, right? Once again, there's a hole here. Somebody would go, well, that's because the Mona Lisa, the ideas behind the Mona Lisa are not what make them great. The Mona Lisa is a more technically proficient painting. If you came out with a painting that was more based on idea than execution, then that means that then in that situation, you would indeed be the one with the better painting than Da Vinci, right? Who had this terrible idea of a painting that I honestly usually come with a plan. Didn't come with a plan today, but that's not the point here. This is interesting, right? This is interesting because you have to suggest a couple things here, right? First of all, there was a hole in the first scenario that I didn't go into because I want to wait till after we're here to fully jump into the holes in these two scenarios. One, going the Mona Lisa doesn't use as much ideation as a lot of the painting. It doesn't use as much vision, it's more technical skill, is something a lot of people would agree with, right? I think that's a fairly agreeable statement because it is a commissioned portrait of a rich girl in Florence at the time, right? I think a lot of people would go, yeah, that's not as much idea as it is execution, right? However, that suggests that there is a scale of painting that is more reliant on technical skill, more reliant on ideation. There is a singular painting out there on Earth that is zero ideation, 100% technical skill, and another painting out there that is 100% ideation, 0% technical skill. I almost just fully fell off this train of thought, guys. That would have been awful. That means that exists, if you want to use that as a whole in the second example. Similar to this, if we are going to go, Ernest Hemingway is too much of a genius to be good in this example, right? One, that means that you gotta take out a lot of guys, right? That means that like, you're taking out a whole echelon of people. Da Vinci wouldn't really work in the second example either, right? That we just use that because a technical skill in painting is a little bit more quantifiable than in writing, right? But if you're gonna say Ernest Hemingway is too much of a genius to apply to these rules, that means there's also somebody who's the most of a genius in terms of technical skill and least of a genius in terms of technical skill. There's also somebody who's most of a genius in terms of vision, least of a genius in terms of vision, right? Almost a whole graph that you could set up of these things. That means that to really try to get to the bottom of this, you would have to set up a full 100% situation where you have the painting that's the most technical skill versus the most ideation. And then take those paintings and have them be from the most talented people and the least talented people, and also the people with the most vision and the least vision. You'd have to make, I think that's 8 paintings. I don't know, I'm not good at math. Somebody do this. You'd have to take all these paintings, and then you would have to try and figure out which one is actually the objective best painting, which I believe is an impossibility. And that's usually where I land on this whole thing. I think, full disclosure here, and I probably should have said this right from the beginning, as somebody who has an okay amount of technical skill in writing and drawing, but very little in painting, as you can see. I'm getting better 6 months in here, but you know, I'm still definitely making my way up. I want ideation to be the more important piece here, because in a fully selfish manner, that means that one day I could be sitting here and have a great painting out of nowhere. That's just, wow, that blows everybody's socks off, because this is just a great idea. Even though you're not a great painter, you had a brilliant idea, and that's more than enough, right? That hope is something I really like, and that's why I, with my whole chest, will say I want ideation to be the more important of the two here. Of course, based on the example I just laid out for all of you, you can't say that though, right? And this is where I usually land at the end of this argument, and this is where I'm going to wrap things up here today. I think that there's two things that we can say at the end of this. One of which I think we'll all agree on, right? That ideation and technical skill, no matter what scenario we put here, they're very much interconnected, right? You need one to get to the other. You need the other to make the other look good. You know, these two things probably shouldn't be separated from each other. You can separate them. You can have this discussion. It's an interesting one to have, and honestly, I think probably a productive one if we could get to an answer. But it's sort of a flawed scenario from the jump just because of how interconnected these two things are. That's the first thing. The second thing, and I think a lot of people might actually disagree with this, is that I think art is too subjective to actually answer this question. Because to do this, there would have to, once again, be a whole contest between these paintings to figure out which one is the objective best. And I don't think we could ever really do that. So I think because of that, this question will never be answered. And that's where I'm left off. I'm motivated to say that this should be a personal answer, that everyone should have their own thoughts on what the more important thing is. I also can't say that though, because I just don't think that holds up here. Like, I don't think that makes sense to be like, it's up to you what's more important. Because there, in theory, should be an objective answer here. Ideation or technical skill is more important. There should be, like, it should be a one or the other thing. But it doesn't seem like it can be. So this is where I'd love your thoughts. Please let me know. Has your answer from the beginning of the video changed? Are you in one camp more than the other now? And where do we go from here, guys? We're totally doing a part 2 to this one. This is a question I want, like, if we're sitting here in 5 years still discussing this and we've made some progress, I'm happy. That's it. So yeah, please let me know your thoughts down below, more than ever for this one. This is the painting. It'll be up on the Instagram later this week, so definitely go follow over there. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Seiss. This is Painting Talk episode 169. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.